Let me tell you, I will, since you asked, tell you my concern about Trump and where I see him is entirely different now that he's been around for a while and I've had a chance to listen. Trump is connecting with people. He's connecting to their dark side. He's connecting to all their fears, the same way Adolf Hitler did. And Trump, if you listen to Trump, he's not so much attacking Barack Obama. He's not attacking the leadership of this country specifically. He's using catchphrases, but he's doing what Hitler did. He's talking about the foreigner among us. In Hitler's day, it was the foreigner, the immigrant, the Jew, the liberal, the communist, the other among us.
Anybody who wasn't white with blonde hair and blue eyes.
Right. So Hitler united the German people, whether they knew it or not at the time, on the basis of we have enemies within the country who are eating us alive, who are destroying us, who are killing us. We have to stop them. Hence the development of the brown shirts. Now, Trump is doing exactly the same thing. He's connecting. In my opinion, he is connecting exactly the same way. When you look at Hitler in the late 20s, after he got out of jail, Germany was in total decline. Unemployment. Well, they were in the middle of like the rest of the world, in a depression in the early 30s.
Yeah.
So Hitler connected with the unemployed, with the uneducated. Trump is connecting with primarily the unemployed or the underemployed and the uneducated. I don't care if it's in Alabama or Derry, New Hampshire. It doesn't make any difference. So all of a sudden, I'm starting to see Trump, who is, by any standard, a very, very ignorant man. And it's my understanding that Hitler was also very stupid, no worldview. Hitler was a sociopath of the most perfect dimensions. And I think Donald Trump is the same way. Trump's connections to the underworld are pretty explicit. And what he is doing is uniting people around hatred. He's not uniting people around positive thinking or let's move the country forward. That's not what Trump's doing. He's doing exactly the same thing that the German Führer did. He's uniting people around hatred. And I'm not selling him short anymore. There's so much hatred in this country, Scott, that has been generated over the past 25 years by wall-to-wall right-wing political and right-wing Christian broadcasting that has just saturated this country top to bottom with contempt, disrespect, disgust, hatred, fear, prejudice, guns, bigotry, madness, insanity, and it hasn't stopped. If you start listening to Trump, he has no policies. He doesn't offer a solution to anything. All he's focusing on is killing or destroying killing, eliminating the other. Right now, the other is immigrants.
Well, and see, here's the thing, though. That is all true as far as it goes, but 2015 America is not 1920s and 1930s Germany.
No, I think it's worse. I think it's much worse. Let me tell you why I think it's worse, Scott. Hitler didn't have mass communication. Hitler had to get up and give speeches. He had to rely on Leni Riefenstahl to get out his films. We have mass media in this country where racists, Klansmen, neo-fascists can connect with each other at the speed of light. No, it's much more dangerous right now, in my opinion, Scott, than it was in Germany in the 20s. And I mean that. I really do. Hey, listen, I hate to cut you off, pal, but I've got to get out of here. We'll talk again, Scott. Thank you. When we come back, I want to share with you something that Digby wrote about Trump in, where was it? Derry, New Hampshire, the other night. We'll be right back. I get fascinated, I really do, with what happened in Germany with the rise of Adolf Hitler, and the reasons for it, the outcomes that were produced because of his rise. I think about the images I've seen of the Nuremberg rally in 1938, the nighttime events, and it's become almost an obsession for me. I don't know why. There's something about that whole Nazi movement that is darkly fascinating to me. I guess because I know what the outcome was, that Hitler blew his own brains out in the bunker in Berlin as the Russians were closing in, after he was directly responsible for 70, 80, 90, 100 million deaths. And there has been so much written about fascism, the possibility of a rise in fascism in this country, and how often it seemed to have gotten a toehold. Keep in mind that Henry Ford and Charles Lindbergh and the original, was it Pierre DuPont, an awful lot of American industrialists and American famous people in the 20s and 30s saw an alignment with Hitler as the only way that the United States should go. Now, granted, these people were overtly anti-Semitic, but they were also fascist, just on a level that you and I can't appreciate. We really can't. Their fascist attitudes, their Nazi attitudes, were not that well known at the time, and the reason for it, of course, was I think, was because media was not interested, or newspapers, radio, were not interested in really getting the word out about how fascist these people were. Keep in mind, there was a guy on NBC in the 30s he was a Catholic priest, Father Coughlin, who was like Rush Limbaugh. He was a right-winger, an extreme right-winger, another Nazi sympathizer. The entire Catholic hierarchy were Nazi sympathizers because, primarily, the church itself is fascist. And Hitler was a natural ally. And this is before Vatican II, when the Catholics would still tell you that the Jews killed their savior. So anything that was done to the Jews was justifiable and expected and would be rewarded with, if nothing else, silence. And again, if you're Catholic and you think I'm crazier than a loon, just go to Google and type in Nazi and the Pope and Catholic priests. Just and look at the pictures that come up. Look at the pictures of the priests and the bishops and the archbishops and the cardinals giving the Nazi salute. So, but the acceptance of Nazism by the German people, to me, was more of a passive acceptance. They had been beaten down so severely by the Treaty of Versailles. They had been beaten down so severely by the war of attrition that was the Act I of global war, World War I. And along comes a guy who talks about strength, strongman. We've been beat down. We don't have leadership. We were defeated. We've been defeated. We need to be strong. We need to assert our power. We are Germans. We are Germans. We are the Teutonic race. We are the master race. Heather Digby, writes, ever since the Donald descended that escalator at Trump Tower a couple of months ago to announce his entry into the presidential race, Democrats have been laughing. Watching the Republicans squirm and Fox News jump through hoops has made the Republican presidential primary a delightful entertainment for their rivals on the other side of the aisle. I don't know how many of them had it in them to watch the whole Trump town hall extravaganza in Derry, New Hampshire on Wednesday, but those who did were unlikely to be laughing by the end of it. There was the standard braggadocio and egomania that characterizes his every appearance, and weird digressions into arcane discussions of things like building materials for the wall, naturally. He complained about the press and politicians and declared himself superior to pretty much everyone on earth. But after you listen to him for a while, you come away from that performance with a very unpleasant sense that something rather sinister is at the heart of the Trump phenomenon. Trump was still talking when Chris Hayes opened his show that night with this comment from Chris Hayes, quote, "I want to talk about what we're seeing unfold here because I think what we are seeing is past the point of a clown show or a parody. I believe it is much more serious and much darker. You have someone who's getting huge crowds, who is polling at the top of the GOP field, who polls show is beating Jeb Bush by 44 to 12% on the issue of immigration, going around the country calling little children, newborn babies, anchor babies, saying that he's going to use that term, which I find a dehumanizing and disgusting term, talking about giving the local police the ability to, quote, do whatever they need to do to round up the illegals, end quote, building a wall, talking about basically chasing 11 million people out, talking about deporting American citizens to, quote, keep families together, talking about what would essentially be the largest, most intrusive police state in the history of the American public. To go about this task, that is the person that is right now at the head of the Republican Party's presidential contest. End quote, Chris Hayes. Digby writes, and the delirious crowd applauded all those things, just as they loudly cheered this reference to Boy Bergdahl, the American soldier held by the Taliban for more than 5 years. This is what Trump said the other night in New Hampshire, quote, "We get a traitor like Bergdahl, dirty, rotten traitor, who, by the way, when he deserted, 6 young, beautiful people were killed trying to find him, and you don't even hear about him anymore. Somebody said the other day, well, he had some psychological problems. You know, in the old days, bing, bong," and he raises his hand like a gun, when we were strong, end quote. Digby. It's that pantomime of him shooting Bergdahl dead and saying, when we were strong, that appeals so much. Trump repeatedly paints a picture of America in decline, weak, impotent, and powerless, in terrible danger of losing everything unless we get a leader who will cast off all this, what he calls political correctness, this effete insistence on following the rules. He promises to, quote, make America great again by cracking down on the bad people and being very, very strong. When talking about Iraq, he characterized the Iraqi people as cowards, quote, running whenever the bullets are flying. The enemy has our best equipment. We have the old stuff. And that this country is in a mess because of all the years of fighting unsuccessfully, because of the way we fight. The implication is that we didn't take the gloves off. He said, quote, the problem is that as a country, we don't have victories anymore. When was the last time we had a victory? I believe in the military and military strength more strongly than anybody, running by a factor of 1 billion. We're going to make our military so strong and so powerful and so incredible, so strong that nobody's going to mess with us, folks. Nobody. And we don't have that right now. This garnered huge cheers from the crowd. More when we come back. 21 past the hour. Getting back to what Digby wrote for Salon regarding Donald Trump. At a huge rally in Derry, New Hampshire, earlier this week. Another huge rally tonight in Birmingham. I guess Birmingham, somewhere in Alabama. Anyway, on economics, it's all about other countries taking advantage of us. He said, quote, they're up here, we're down there. I don't blame China or Mexico or Japan. Their leaders are smarter and sharper and more cunning. And that's an important word, cunning, than our leaders. Our leaders are babies. Our country's falling apart. China's killing us. They've taken so much of our wealth. They've taken our jobs. They've taken our business. They've taken our manufacturing. Our land, because somebody screamed out our land. Our land, the way they're going, they'll have that pretty soon, too. Think about it. We have rebuilt China. Somebody said to me, that's a harsh statement. It's the greatest theft in the history of the United States. Now, I have great respect for China and their leaders. The largest bank in the world is from China. They're a tenant in one of my buildings. I love China. I think it's great. But we don't have the people that know what they're doing, so they're killing us. You know what that is? They call it a sucking action. They're sucking the jobs and the money right out of our country. That's what they're doing. We've rebuilt China. They have bridges. They have airports. So do other countries. And we're like a third world country. They're taking our jobs. They're taking our money. They take our jobs. They take everything. And we owe them money. How does that happen? It's magic. That's not going to happen with Donald Trump. Digby writes, if a person feels as if this country isn't what it used to be, that they've lost their place, that their future isn't promising, Donald Trump is telling them right up front that foreigners are to blame. It isn't the U.S. government being unwilling to collect taxes from people like Donald Trump so he can build infrastructure. We're rebuilding China instead with our own money. Isn't that what we spend vast sums of money to maintain the world's only superpower military? It's that people from other countries are stealing us blind, and Trump will fight all these foreigners to take our country back from them wherever they are? Of course, there is no foreigner who is wrecking this once great country more than the undocumented immigrant. And he plans to cleanse our culture of their evil influence. He said, we have crime all over the country. We have the borders. The southern border is a disaster. The other night, a 66-year-old woman, a veteran, raped, sodomized, brutally killed by an illegal immigrant. We got to stop. We got to take back our country. We got to take it back. Huge applause on that line. I love this country, and I know that I can make it great again. We have to build a wall. We have to get the bad people out. A lot of the illegals, if you look at Chicago with the gangs, you look at Baltimore, you look at Ferguson, a lot of these gangs, the most vicious are illegals. They're out of here. The first day I will send those people, those guys are out of here. They talk about guns. I'm a big Second Amendment person. I believe in it so strongly. Big! But they talk about guns, and you look at Chicago. Chicago has the toughest gun laws in the U.S. by far, and people are being shot with guns all over the place. You need enforcement, but you also have to get the bad people out, the people that aren't supposed to be here. And we're going to get them out so fast, so quick, and it's going to be tough. It's not going to be, oh, please, will you come with us? Please, will you please come with us? Because you know, these law enforcement people, and I know the guys in Chicago, the police commissioner's a great man. They can do it if they're allowed to do it. I know those guys. I know them. New York, they're great. Bratton, great. They can all do it. They can all do it. But they have to be allowed to do their job. They have to be allowed to do their job. Cheers. It isn't just liberals like Chris Hayes who are becoming alarmed by this. Republican strategist Alex Castellanos sees the attraction of Trump in similar terms. Castellanos says, quote, when a government that has pledged to do everything can't do anything, otherwise sensible people turn to the strong man. This is how the autocrat, the popular dictator, gains power. We are seduced by his success and strength. As our old, inflexible government grows beyond its capacity to service a complex and adaptive society, and its failures deface our landscape, it creates demand for efficiency. Who can bring order to this chaos? Who has the guts and the strength to make the mess we have to make the mess we have made eventually work? Then the call goes out for the strong man. Who cares what he believes or promises? And with the voice of the common man, though he is anything but, the strong man comes and pledges to make America great again. End quote. Now, Castellanos agrees with Trump that America is going to hell in a handbasket, largely due to liberal failure, but he doesn't think that consolidating power in the hands of a single billionaire is a good way to deal with it. A little bit more from Digby when we come back. Stay with us. Back to what Digby wrote after Trump's appearance in New Hampshire the other night. She goes on, it's easy to dismiss Trump's ramblings as the words of a kook, but he's tapping into the rage and frustration many Americans feel when our country is exposed as being imperfect. These Republicans were shamed by their exalted leadership's debacle in Iraq and believe that American exceptionalism is no longer respected around the world, and they are no longer respected here at home. Trump is a winner, and I think this is fundamentally what attracts them to him. He went on by saying this, I will be fighting and I will win because I'm somebody that wins. We're in a very sad shape as a country, and you know why that is? We're more concerned about political correctness than we are about victory, than we are about winning. We're not going to be so politically correct anymore. We're going to get things done, end quote. If this guy isn't a reincarnation of Adolf Schicklgruber, I don't know who is. Back to Digby. But his dark authoritarian message of intolerance and hate is likely making it difficult for him or any Republican to win a national election, particularly since all the other candidates feel compelled to follow his lead. And while Trump's fans may want to blame foreigners for all their troubles, most Americans know that their troubles can be traced to some powerful people right here at home, powerful people like Donald Trump. Still, history is littered with strongmen nobody took seriously until it was too late. When someone like Trump captures the imagination of millions of people, it's important to pay attention to what he's saying. For all his ranting, you'll notice that the one thing Trump never mentions is the Constitution. Heather Digby. Now, if you think back, or if you look at the old films, especially by the ones produced and directed by Leni Riefenstahl, Hitler's film biographer, and keeping in mind that Riefenstahl framed Hitler in the best possible way to show his superiority, his super race, his Übermensch, his ability to talk about how the German people had been humiliated and beat down, and it was all because of the foreigners and the Jews and the gypsies and the liberals and the communists. And if you listen to Trump doesn't talk about enemies outside the United States. He's talking about enemies inside the United States, just like Hitler did. Exactly. I mean, I hate to belabor the point here, and I know a lot of people may disagree with this, but if you listen to Trump and listen to what he's saying and what he's not saying, the guy has nothing to offer except this, I'm a strong man, look at me, I'm powerful, I'm successful, I'm a billionaire, and these goddamn vermin who are loose inside of our precious country are destroying it. And then tonight I understand that when he was in Alabama, giving the speech, he was talking about genes, genetics. I mean, we've been down this road before. And we've talked about on this program over the past 20 years, fascism in this country has always been about 2 centimeters below the surface of all this Jesus stuff and this I love America stuff and you know, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Fascism in this country is you can touch it if you want to reach out and touch it. Yes.
Well, I was just going to add to my decorating comments that, you know, I just have to say Donald Trump is starting to remind me an awful lot of Vladimir Putin. You know, I keep waiting to see photos of Donald Trump bare-chested, riding a bear or wrestling an anaconda or, you know, shooting guns at things or cuddling up with little white tigers or Don't you get that feeling that he's...
No, not at all.
Putin-esque?
No, I really don't, Kathy. I think the comparison or any similarities between Trump and Putin are just not there. I'll stay with the Hitler analogy. And the reason for it, communism has never been a viable threat in this country, and Putin's a communist. Fascism has been a threat in this country. We were founded on fascism. I mean, come on. Let's just put it where it is. And keep in mind, and I'm sure a lot of you know this, that the attempt to align the United States with Hitler in the 30s was just overt. It was just right up front. The German-American Bund, the rallies at the Cow Palace in Chicago, the rallies at Madison Square Garden in New York, the rallies in San Francisco, the German-American Bund, the Nazis, the arm, the raised arm, the swastika. It sounds like something. If you're a regular listener to this program, you know I've been talking about this and around this and through this for a good 20 years. Fascism really scares the hell out of me. It really, really does. I mean, any kind of true believer-ism is scary. But fascism has a record. Fascism has a record. So does the kind, and let me just back up. Before someone sends me an email, says, well, Stalin is responsible for 30 million dead, and he was a communist. Stalin was a fascist. That wasn't communism that existed in the Soviet Union in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s. That wasn't communism. That was Russian-style fascism. But Hitler, who had no problem identifying the internal enemies, and they were the parasites, they were the ones that had to be beaten and killed and stomped on and destroyed and gassed eventually and burned in ovens. How much distance is there between the most ferocious rhetoric of Adolf Hitler and what is beginning to generate and come out of Trump's mouth? There is a feedback loop here. Trump is such an ignorant son of a bitch. He's kind of like Hitler in that way. Just a stupid, stupid man. Remember what Hitler was? He was a goddamn house painter. He had his brains addled by poison gas on the Eastern Front or the Western Front during World War I. Listen to what Trump says. Listen to how his rhetoric. Listen to what he says about women, what he says about immigrants, what he says, how long is it going to be? You know, he brags about, I know everybody, I know the boys in Chicago, I know the police. We're going to turn everything over to the police. Let them, they're just, we got to stop this political correctness. Isn't that very similar? I mean, the Jews in Germany were part of the reason that Germany was such a fantastic place. The composers, the scientists, the thinkers, the artists, the writers. And along comes Hitler. Once I started reading about Dachau and Treblinka and reading Elie Wiesel's books, and I know there's all kinds of, I'm not talking about Israel, Palestine. I'm talking about how that kind of hatred was focused by Adolf Hitler against people who were part of the core of the greatness of Germany. And I look at what Trump is doing. He has a different Jew. His Jew is an immigrant. They rape, they murder, they're drug dealers. They come across the border. They're coming. I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to build up the military. I love guns. All right. That's enough, I guess. I'll be curious to see what this neo-Nazi had to say in Alabama tonight. Alabama is run by a guy, the governor of Alabama is a physician who denied the people of Alabama, the poor people, Medicaid expansion through Obamacare. When I say he's a physician, he's a dermatologist. He runs a bunch of clinics, but he does have an MD degree. He's also a fundamentalist Southern Baptist Christian. He's anti-homosexuals. He's anti-women. He's anti-immigrants. He's a perfect match for Trump. Folks better start paying attention to what this funny-looking little tyrant is saying and the dismissive attitude he has about everybody except himself. And then again, I'm telling you, just if no other reason, just to satisfy what should be your curiosity, get on the Google and find some of Leni Riefenstahl's films. Look at those rallies in Nuremberg. Listen to Hitler. They'll put a translation on the bottom. Listen to what he's saying and compare it to what Trump is saying. No, I'm serious. We'll be back.
Order, everyone a foreign race.